Thank you, Chairman. And I want to start out by just thanking the Chairman and the Vice Chairman for their willingness to work so closely together on leading this investigation. I certainly think that today's hearing is helpful in setting a baseline for the intentions and the techniques of Russia's active measures campaigns, but I also look forward to public hearings in which we can dig even deeper into the substance of what happened specifically in the 2016 election. Similarly, I believe it's critical that we dig into the financial aspects involved and that we follow the money to determine whether and how the Russians have used financial leverage to achieve their strategic goals. I think we need to do everything possible to get to the truth. The American people certainly deserve no less. And I think if we do not take this seriously, it is not hyperbolic to say that our fundamental democratic institutions are at risk. Dr. Godson said something in his statement for the record about the history of relying on agents of influence. In other words, recruiting and co-opting sympathetic groups or individuals in the U.S. and in the West to advance the Russian agenda. Do you all agree that financing is one of the methods often used by Russia to recruit sympathetic agents?
Yes.
Yes, there's publicly available evidence of a Moscow-based bank financing one of the presidential candidates in France.
So when they use financial resources to recruit agents of influence, like the example you just made, is it always a simple of exchange of money for assistance, or does Russia sometimes attempt to buy influence more subtly through access to lucrative business deals and contracts and those kinds of arrangements?
Yes, I think all of the above we can show examples of in the past.
Yes, they have used their considerable financial business leverage in Eastern Europe to cut favorable energy deals, to offer lucrative deals to local companies and governments.
I think the key point in this is comparing it to Soviet active measures to today is we didn't do business transactions with the Soviet Union. So they have so many more access points to compromise people financially or to influence them on the financial space that they couldn't have done during the Cold War.
This next question is for any of you. I'm curious if you see money in politics as an opening for Russia to be able to potentially manipulate our elections, especially given their expertise at moving financial resources through networks and the change in our own environment in which there is now a lack of transparency in the current U.S. campaign finance environment, where oftentimes you have elections where a majority of the dollars spent are not even originating from the individual candidates themselves. Have any of you given that some thought?
So I think it's a little bit overstated based on the public part of it. The Russians aren't stupid. They know that if they are ever caught directly putting money into what looks like a Manchurian candidate kind of scenario, this could be provocation for war, or it could be sanctions. It could be a host of different things. At the same point, I would also offer you, from an intelligence perspective, why not look at it as a way to compromise somebody? So if you have a candidate that's doing well and you have very open campaign finance, why not slip them some money where they don't know the original source of it, such that if it's revealed later, they are discredited? So it can go both ways. It's not just promotion. It can also be used as a tool and a weapon.
You, Mr. Watts, I think did a really good job of laying out for us how these influence operations actually have the impact of sort of organically changing the trends on media and end up being sort of a self-reinforcing mechanism. Are there analytic or digital tools that can discount the impact of those bots and of that manufactured forcing mechanism within the way that information travels on the web today and impacts the media?
So I think all the social media companies are starting to realize that their ad revenue mechanisms can be manipulated for this. There are more than just Russian fake news out there. You've got profiteers, you've got political groups that do that, and you've got, satire, which is thrown in the mix of it. You're seeing the social media companies try and regulate this now or deem things as fake news, but that's going to fail. Ultimately, any attempt to deem things as fake or not fake is going to lead to freedom of speech violations, freedom of the press violations. Because how do you do that? How do you determine who's being fair or not? I think a better way to do it, and what we propose, is to create the version of Information Consumer Reports, which is an independent agency which is funded by the social media companies, has no government involvement, no government funding, that provides a rating in terms of the news that shows up on your feed, such that, much like nutrition labels on food, you know what you're consuming. Right now, part of the reason this is so effective is a fake news outlet can pop up one day, pump out stories that are sensational, and fall down the next. The consumer, an American, on their Facebook feed, which is curated to the things that they like to click on, and even in their Google searches, which is curated to things other people like to click on like them, end up clicking on these things because they're popular. If they had a score or a rating, some sort of symbol there that said, you're more than welcome to click on this, but this is the National Enquirer, you can evaluate how much of it is truth and how much is manipulated truth and how much is false. And just like we saw with Consumer Reports when I was growing up, it had 15 variables. It's rated over time, and it becomes a trusted integer that you can go to. I think that's a better way to do it. We're not restricting Americans' freedom of speech and press, and at the same point, where if they want to look at fake news, they can look at it, but they know what they're getting into.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Langford.